sensitive topic in South Africa right now. KZN is facing renewed tensions. This amid a wave of anti-legal migrant protests that have rocked that part of South Africa. There's been forced evictions and a growing humanitarian concern. In recent weeks, groups like Operation Dudula, March and March have led demonstrations targeting undocumented foreign nationals, accusing them of contributing to crime and unemployment. But human rights groups warn that many documented refugees and asylum seekers are also being caught in the fallout, with families displaced. There are people that are sleeping outside police stations and places of worship like churches and mosques, and they're facing severe shortages of food and basic necessities. South African authorities have also condemned vigilantism and unlawful evictions, while humanitarian organizations and the United Nations are also calling for calm and for the protection of vulnerable communities and lawful enforcement of immigration policies. And I think that's very, very important. And we're going to be looking at that. What is panning out to be something that's very, very unprecedented. And joining us now to unpack the situation on the ground, the reality of some of these refugees and asylum seekers since this fresh wave of protests, will be joined by the country's secretary for the Southern Africa Refugee Organization Forum, Mr. Shomari, Omar Mukandjwa, who's going to be giving us insight on the reality on the ground and what people are facing. Brother Shomari, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure chatting to you. Welcome to News and Views.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarilo. Thank you very much for your invite again, once again.
No, the pleasure is all ours. I want you to paint a picture for us. What is the current humanitarian situation that the refugees and asylum seekers in KwaZulu-Natal are facing at this current moment? What are they telling you? What challenges do they have?
Yeah, thank you, Salilo, and thank you again for your station to give us this opportunity. Try to put the situation how it is currently in KwaZulu-Natal. Obviously, as anyone or everyone will understand, as you have put it in your intro, that since a few months now, that the situation in KwaZulu-Natal is going uncontrollably. It started with the blockade of refugees or all foreign nationals whom they termed as undocumented, not attending or getting services at hospitals, in the Eddington Hospital. The very same trend continued by blocking student learners, foreign learners at Eddington School. Now it is been that they want all foreigner outside of South Africa, the March and March, Operation Dudula, and the other civil movement that are included in those vigilant groups. Now, the situation as it is that they have changed their techniques, their tactics of conducting their march. They are no longer going into in the street as they've been so violent as everybody witnessed. What they are doing now is they are doing it in a clandestine way, going, forcing, chasing those who are trying to survive. Because remember, refugee and asylum seekers in South Africa are not placed in the refugee camp. There is a system what they call local integrations, and therefore they are allowed to work and study in South Africa so that they can integrate. So they pay their rent, and paying rent, they are paying through survival of doing minimum work, like cutting the hair salon and all those things. That is where they get their survival in order for them to pay rent and buy other material that they have to survive in the country. Now, when they are trying to open their businesses, for example, the member of Operation Dudula, they have create what we call the rogues, for them to start attacking refugee for those who are trying to open their business to earn a living. Yeah, remember, it is almost 2 months now. They never received any food supply from anyone, neither from the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, whom is the responsible for the refugees. Never, none of those have ever went there to give them food assistance, for example. So people, they are blocked in the houses. And when they try to go and open their business, they are being attacked. Not once. Last week, it was almost 15 people were stabbed by these vigilante groups who are working in the rocks, but despite they are trying to deny that they don't know what is happening. South Africa with the rocks is not in something unprecedented something. It is known that the people, they create rocks for them to cause chaos in the main part of the country. So they have no food, and that's why they decided no, because we cannot die in the houses. Let's go and seek protection from the police. And when they went to the police, unfortunately, police has become violent themselves, starting abusing them, beating them, chasing them out. Currently, as we speaking, they are at the Diaconia, and they are deciding to go back to the police, despite police shooting at them. 15 people injured. 10 people was injured yesterday.
Very concerning state of affairs there. There's this argument, that always pops up when these kind of conversations are being had, and I think it's very, very important to look at it and dissect it. When South African members of the community argue that undocumented immigration is placing pressure on jobs, is placing pressure on healthcare and public services, how do refugee organizations like yourselves and just the immigrant community here in South Africa interpret that reality? And what do you think is the best way to go about communicating this situation? Because two things can be right at the same time. There could be elements of xenophobia and anti-migrant sentiment in our communities, which should be condemned in any shape or form. And there could be a reality where South Africans on the ground could be voicing out what they deem is the truth, and they are witnessing it and they are feeling it day to day. And I don't think that conversation should be shut down, because that's what makes people angry. When you tell them what they are feeling and what they are seeing doesn't make sense. From your point of view, what's the best way to deal with this situation where both parties will feel like they are heard and no violence and no hate is being exchanged between the two parties? Because that's where it gets very, very dangerous.
Yeah, thank you very much. That question is very, very important. That question is very, very important. And on the South Africa Refugee Organization Forum, we have raised this matter not once, not twice. We don't blame South African when they go to the street, take the streets, and voice themselves their concern that they have for joblessness and other ills in the society. Of course, we cannot just reject everything to say foreigner, they are all okay, they are angels. No, we are not saying that the foreigner are angels. Where our blame starts is the inadequacy of not trying to bring the foreign national plus the local community together and explain why there are forms of foreign national. We are being put in one basket. That is the first dangerous that is there. In the refugee, in the foreign communities, there are different types of foreign national. Number one, we have those we call migrant. A migrant is someone who leaves his country or her country to another country seeking for a job. And if South Africa should fight, she will start fighting for migrant, because migrants are the one taking their jobs. But the refugees are not taking their jobs. Refugees are here for protection. So the difference between a migrant and a refugee are two different things. We are defending here refugee, of course, because we are the refugee ourselves. What the refugee says, a refugee is someone who lives in or her country in seek of safety. And once they arrived in a certain particular place, the country have to provide them with a protection. And that's what South Africa has offered, protection to the refugee. They don't protect. There's no protection or a convention of a protection of migrant. Of course, a migrant can come in the country seeking for a job, and he has to work and return to his country. A refugee can only return to his country when the safety and the security is guaranteed in his country of origin. So these are two different things. The other aspect that failed, the United Nations High Commissioner failed, including the government of South Africa failed, was to bring the communities together. For example, when somebody, your child is going to a school, completing matric, there is a process where they go through what we call orientation, so that they must understand we left now primary school, we're in high school. There is a new adaptation. It was never done in South Africa, where refugees started coming to South Africa. United Nations, neither the government, did not inform or bring South African together and the refugees together to say this is a new people here. The reason is A, B, C, D, why they are here. And you refugee, remember you are in a foreign land. You are no longer in your country. This is how you should conduct yourselves. But the government is expecting, without any orientation, people to know the law, which they were not told it from the beginning. I always give this example, it's very important. Someone who's from Colombia, we know Colombia, Ecuador, they take what you call this cocaine as a tea. And if somebody fly from Ecuador or those countries, Southern America, to South Africa with this cocaine tea leaves, are you going to arrest him when he doesn't know if this thing is prohibited in this country? It won't work. You will have to explain to him, no, this does not work here. Another example, is typical example, is when the ANC members were going to Tanzania. The minister, she is now the speaker of the parliament, Tante Modise, went to Tanzania. Tanzania at that time was banning women not wearing short skirts. She went in Tanzania with a short skirt. What happened? Did they arrest her? They had to teach her, no, here, if you walk like this, we'll have to arrest you. They bring a kanga and cover herself to say no, because if you walk like this, you'll be breaking the law of Tanzania. But she was already on the tarmac. Tarmac was already Tanzanian land. It means she broke the law, but she could not be arrested because she was ignorant of Tanzanian law. Exactly, that is how it is. Unfortunately, the government and the people of South Africa want us to learn the law that we were not told from the beginning. Now, what is the solution to this? We understand the frustration among South Africans. We understand whatever they are saying, we empathize with them. But what we are not agreeing with them, the violent nature, that they are expressing their anger to the wrong people. President Ramaphosa promised people in 2017 when he was elected as a president. He says he's going to create 1 million jobs. We never see those million jobs. I don't say if these people who are cutting hair on the salon, on the street, are those million jobs that former President Ramaphosa promised to create. Former President Jacob Zuma, who is being suspected of being behind all this thing, because we have seen video, him encouraging this and saying so many sort of things. He, when he was a president, promised to create 1 million jobs. Did he create those million jobs? No. But their frustration should go to the people who promised them to create 1 million jobs and they create none. I was reading a report recently of the work at the South African Reserve Bank. The lowest pay there is 1.4 million. How can one person live on 1.4 million a year while someone else is living on 350 per month? Can you compare these two? That, I think, is where South Africans should start going and showing their frustration there. Including ourselves, we can even accompany them to say, no, what we are doing to your people, it is not good. You should give your people what they deserve to be getting, and not sending them to go and start attacking the people who are also trying to survive, for them to live in South Africa. Remember, we don't have a refugee camp. As I said, refugees are not placed in the refugee camp. They survive through day-to-day income. You go to cut your salon open, you get a little bit, you come and feed your family. That is not a job that you can say somebody has taken your job. And if you want to do also salon, do the salon without, understand the competition, that you can open a salon. Nobody prohibits you to not open a salon. Unfortunately, these are our people. When they attack our people in the salon, they take their machine, they take their tent, and they leave them injured. and there's nothing that is being done. That's why people, they say no, that instead of dying on the street, let's go die at the police. Police should protect us. Unfortunately, police start beating them again and injure most of our people, our community there.
What's the general sentiment amongst the migrant communities here in South Africa? Are people considering leaving? Are people scared for their lives? I don't know what kind of conversations are being had, because the most dangerous one that I've heard, and I think this should also be condemned, is when people say, no, we will retaliate, we will fight South Africans, and that's a very, very dangerous conversation
look,
to start.
There's as I said from the beginning.
Yes, continue.
Yes, I'm saying that is a very dangerous assessment. I'm saying people should know the difference between the migrant or refugees or foreigners. For those who are saying they are going to retaliate, refugee, they said they are not going to retaliate because they have no power to retaliate. They are here for protection. If they are here for protection, why they should retaliate? The sentiment which is there is that we have nowhere to go. We have nowhere to go. We cannot design where ourselves to go to our countries. For example, for those who are coming from the Democratic Republic of Congo, when they ask for repatriation, voluntary repatriation, the UN assessment is that there is no refugee can be returned to the eastern part of Congo. Of course, those who come from non-violent country, those where there is the peaceful country, they can go. But a refugee is here because the country, there is insecurity in this country. There is the instability in their country, so they cannot return to a country where they are not guaranteed the security and the safety to return. Now, for those who wanted to return, they can return. Those who are not refugee, migrants can return. Those who come for business and they use a refugee, fraudulently using a refugee identity, they can return. We know them. We don't want to mention them on the air, but they are known. But the refugee cannot go to their country now because the situation in most of their country are not. We are not here for retaliations. We are not here for fighting for South African. Despite police starting fighting us, you saw yourself, the image are there. You did not see any refugee retaliating or trying to resist. In fact, police were pushing them away despite the resistance. And this our message. We are saying we are not here for violence. We advocate for a peaceful coexistence, and that will only engage if people sit around the table and iron all those things. South Africans bring their concerns, refugees bring their concerns, and trying to see what a better solution we can put in place for us to continue to live in harmony and not to be influenced by certain people who want their certain agenda. We know all this politically. People, when they will start the campaigning for themselves because of local elections. But this is not only for a local election, because it started since 2008. Up to date, this thing continue. Our people continue to suffer. And we are suffering something that we are not capable to bring a solution to. The people have a solution to all these South African are demanding. Are the government which are there, they are not doing their job they're supposed to do. It's the United Nations that is supposed to help the refugee and not also helping the refugees.
No, thank you so much, Brother Shomari, Omar, Mukandjwa. Always a pleasure chatting to you. And I think this was a very, very important conversation to get the other perspective on the conversations that are being had by migrants in South Africa. And I think we'll have to continue this conversation later on, but we're going to leave it there for now. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I really also much appreciate it.
There we go. Brother Shomari Omar Mukandjwa, Country Secretary for the Southern Africa Refugee Organizations Forum, speaking to us about the growing humanitarian concerns surrounding anti-immigrant tensions and refugee displacement, and the ongoing protests that we've been seeing in parts of KZN, which have left quite a number of refugees very vulnerable, facing hunger. They can't work. They're very fearful for their lives. And it's starting to unravel into something that is very unpalatable. At the end of the day, the buck stops with government, because as I mentioned, two things can be true at the same time. There is very unsavory characters that are from outside of the country that are here in the country, and they're doing all kinds of nonsense, crime, human trafficking, selling of drugs, and prostitution, and all of that should be condemned. It would be very dangerous for people to say South Africans don't know what they're talking about. They're xenophobic. They hate Africans. South Africans have been coexisting. When you go to townships or you go to the city or anywhere across the country, have been coexisting and living with our brothers and sisters from the continent for a very long time now. But also, there are xenophobic South Africans who, I don't know, for whatever reason, hate brothers and sisters from the continent. And those two things need to be addressed, and there needs to be a dialogue, as Brother Mukandjwa says, because the status quo is very dangerous and can unravel to something that all of us don't want to see. Going to take a quick break. We'll be back with you after this.